Continuing with our exposition of 0-point standing and the metrics of balance, I'd like to remind you that the metrics of balance is our connection to the electromagnetic field of the planet. And our connection to the electromagnetic field of the planet is experienced by ourselves through the geometry of balance. The geometry of balance is the life force then that allow us to experience ourselves as three-dimensionally suspended in space, and is our connection to the electromagnetic field of the planet. Without the geometry of balance, it would be very difficult, it's complex to experience the electromagnetic field because it's so vast. So the geometry becomes the connection to the field of forces that is constantly converging and constantly expanding into what we call the fountain of life. Remember that the first movement that we practice now in Unity in Motion standing, it will be the fountain of life, and you will learn it. And the whole mandala, all the practice of this first section, geometrical unity, is our connection to the geometry, our connection to the electromagnetic field of the planet, and our experience of the fountain of life. The experience of the fountain of life then is actually also the three-dimensional suspension of the spinal column. So here we are from the side plane, the spinal column. This is the center, the 7 centers. This is the pelvic floor, the pelvis, the solar plexus, the chest, the throat, the head, and the crown. This is the right and the left existing right here within the shoulders. The transversal connections existed within the throat. The transversal connections existed between pelvis and shoulders, balance at the solar plexus, the center of the hip right here, and the pelvic floor, which is our connection to the floor via the legs. These are all the curves of the spine, and as we begin to become more and more connected to the center of space, remember all the definitions of the center of space and the 7 centers, through the release of the movements and the connections of Unity in Motion, each of the vertebrae of the spinal column, as I said earlier, will begin to become redirected in their angle of 3 dimension. To understand a little bit that further, I would like to go back to the 3 symbols of balance. Remember, this is the way we started in the explanation of Unity in Motion. And I would like to bring you to the 3 symbols. This is the center of balance, the release of the spine, the 7 centers, the center of the floor, becoming the center of equilibrium, in which gravity and expansion are the same. And I wanted to tell you that these 3 graphics are stopped in one moment of motion, changing the weight of the body between one leg and the other one in the act of walking. So if you recognize that this is one frame of the same motion, then when you see the graphics, you can see the differences existing in the same frame of movement. This is important because what we're talking about is a biomechanical change between one leg and the other one in the act of walking, the same frame, and at the center of balance here, the frame is really actually balanced by gravity and expansion. The body is suspended. These are the 3 main centers of right and left. And then in compression, then when the body becomes innocently bounded by gravity, then the curves of the spine becomes over accentuated. In this particular situation, the lower back, the curvature of the lower back, becomes accentuated and becomes it provides then the sliding of the hip into a particular direction. And then the sliding of the hip begins to reflect itself or reflects itself in the centering of the joints of the legs. This is important to understand that whatever is occurring in the spine is reflected about all the joints within the legs and arms, and is reflected in the way that the head is balanced on top of the atlas. So this formation of balance is integral for this individual, but the integrity of the whole formation is not necessarily allowing the person to experience the freedom within each of the vertebrae, and the freedom existing and the synchronicity existing between gravity and expansion. So in this particular symbol, gravity becomes accentuated. It's more over accentuated than the expansion. At this other side, then, the desire to overextend again transforms the free curves of the spine into a much more straight form. And when the spine begins overextended into a straight manner, vertical, gives the idea that you are really going up, but in reality you're going backwards innocently, as I said, because we don't know that we're doing it. We're just reflecting to the way we sense ourselves. So I keep using the word innocent, and what I mean by that nobody is aware that we're moving that way or we're doing that. It's just that we are following our own sensation, and we sometimes don't understand that we're using the spine or the curves of the spine to support ourselves. Then the movement becomes shortened, and then the joints begins to be realigned themselves into a different formation, and then gravity becomes predominant, and then we do not get to experience that the center of gravity is also the center of expansion. When both become equal, then we use the term three dimensions, because we have a center within ourselves from which we can relate to space. When gravity becomes predominant, then the centers become almost potential, because they are all interrelated between each other, and they are reflecting a sort of a not opposition, but a sort of a mechanical resistance within the motion itself. So it is important that we understand that when we talk about the center of the seven centers, we're talking about the relationship of tensional forces that centralizes our self-equilibrium and unites the sense of equilibrium with the sense of gravity and the sense of expansion. And the metrics of balance is our connection to the electromagnetic field of the planet that we experience through the geometry of balance, and is our desire to experience the balance of the life force within ourselves, then allow us to experience also natural momentum, that we are moving with the totality of ourselves. Okay, thank you. I would like to say also that these three symbols of balance that we use as a form of differentiation to begin to understand the three senses of balance: one, compression, opposition, and the center of balance, as it relates to the individual, many times are inherited patterns. They are memories within our genetic makeup. Sometimes we have gone through accidents or situations in life in which we have innocently self-enclosed within our physical sense of self, and then manifested to patterns that we, as I said earlier, we are not aware that we are inside of it. We just think sometimes that that's the way we are, without not knowing that it's just an interpretation, and that as we begin to understand three dimensions and balance, then we can undo that formation and reinstate it into a formation then that allow us to experience the pleasure existing in self-equilibrium. Because remember that at either side, you can see it, there will be places that the person may experience pain. As I said earlier, the curvature of the lower back. Remember, sometimes it becomes like a herniated disc. Then sometimes pain in the shoulders, because the shoulders are rotated inwardly. Sometimes place in the neck, because when the curvature of the lower back is over accentuated and the curvature of the thoracic vertebra becomes blocked a little bit here, then the neck has no means to extend, because the natural extension of the neck is really actually totally dependent of the whole extension of the spine. So what happens to us is that we created different ideas within ourselves. We think about my neck or my shoulders or my lower back, and without not recognizing that those segments of those areas of discomfort are totally interrelated inside of a full pattern called the spinal column. So remember that is all about to dissolve any sense of physical discomfort, or to erase the discomfort by finding the release existing within the physical body as it is extended three-dimensionally in space. Okay, thank you.